Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're attempting something quite difficult. We're looking into a place that's often described as existing truly outside humanity.
Yeah.
We're talking about the North Korean Kwanlee-so detention facilities, the total control zones,
hmm
and our focus specifically is going to be on, well, the mechanics of control and the terrifying daily life inside one particular camp, Camp 14.
That's right. And our mission today, it's a tough one. We want you, the listener, to get a really thorough, quick understanding of this unique prison system.
What does daily life even look like there?
Exactly. What's it like behind those walls? And, the horrific legal or maybe extra-legal mechanism that sends people there. Often, they haven't even committed a crime themselves.
Right.
And then the journey out, the incredibly complex, almost impossible routes to freedom that, well, just a handful of people have ever managed to take.
Okay, so our sources for this, they're pretty intense, multi-layered. We're drawing on detailed reports from human rights organizations, specifically the Committee for Human Rights in North Korea, HRNK.
Yes.
And that's alongside extensive analysis of satellite imagery. But crucially, we're weaving in survivor accounts, primarily framed by Shin Dong-hyuk's experiences, documented in Blaine Harden's book, Escape from Camp 14.
And Kim Young's testimony, too. Very important.
Absolutely.
And look, to really set the stage here, we have to acknowledge the comparisons people make. These places often get compared to Nazi death camps or the Soviet Gulag system.
Yeah, you hear that a lot.
And while the specifics, the architecture, the methods, they differ, the comparison holds true in, I think, one really essential way. They are systems designed for basically industrial-scale human destruction and forced labor.
But there's something unique about the Kwanlee-so, isn't there? Especially Camp 14.
There is. What makes it so chillingly unique is that so many people are condemned not for anything they did, but for the supposed crime of their family, their lineage.
Generational punishment.
Exactly. It cements this reality built on systemic generational punishment that literally targets the unborn,
Yeah.
people born inside knowing nothing else.
Okay, let's try and unpack just the sheer scale of this system. When we talk about Kwanlee, so what exactly are we defining?
These are the absolute worst type of detention facilities in North Korea. They're known as total control zones. And that name, it's tragically accurate.
Total control, meaning
Meaning, unlike maybe some other labor camps where there's a sentence, people sent here are expected never, ever to leave. They're put to forced labor, subjected to extreme malnutrition
yeah.
until they just waste away.
And the regime has tried to keep this hidden.
Oh, completely. This system relies entirely on secrecy. For decades, the official line was categorical denial. These camps simply didn't exist, a total policy of obfuscation, silence.
But you can't really hide something this big forever, can you? Especially from space.
Exactly. The sheer size makes them impossible to hide from satellite imagery. That analysis has been crucial in piercing the veil, confirming their existence and scale.
So let's talk about that scale. Camp 14 specifically. Kaeshan, right. How big are we talking?
The estimates from human rights reports are staggering. Around 153 square kilometers.
153 square kilometers. It's hard to visualize. Give us some context.
Okay, well, for listeners in, say, New York, that's a physical area nearly 3 times the size of Manhattan Island.
3 times Manhattan. Wow. Okay, so this isn't some small hidden compound.
Not at all. It's a massive, sprawling network of subjugation. A huge territory dedicated to imprisonment and forced labor.
And how is an area that big secured?
With a massive perimeter fence. We're talking 60 kilometers of fencing, constantly monitored by patrol paths, numerous guard posts, checkpoints.
50 kilometers.
And what's really interesting is how they use the landscape itself. It's not just flat land. The camp stretches from river valleys deep into mountain peaks.
So the geography helps contain people.
Absolutely. The raw wilderness, natural barriers like the Tong River, they form an outer layer of defense. Even if you somehow got past the fence, you're facing an incredibly harsh, unforgiving environment designed to stop you or track you down.
And inside this massive area, it's not just empty land, right? What does the satellite imagery show?
No, it's crucial to understand this isn't just a fenced-in field. Satellites confirm sprawling, self-sufficient infrastructure. You see small villages, prisoner barracks, guard housing, various working units, industrial sites.
Villages inside the camp?
Yes, settlements. And perhaps most tellingly, their own internal railroad network. They even generate their own electricity.
Their own electricity. That's a key detail, isn't it?
It really is. It means the whole operation is fundamentally insulated. It doesn't rely on the national grid.
making it harder to monitor from the outside?
Exactly. Invisible to external monitoring through energy usage patterns. It ensures absolute operational control, total isolation.
And what are they actually doing in there? What's being produced with all this forced labor inside this huge territory?
Well, the forced labor seems purely economic, serving the state. Satellite evidence clearly shows extensive farming, agriculture. They're growing rice, vegetables, raising livestock.
Or food production, okay.
But also, these facilities are often strategically positioned right next to key resource extraction sites, primarily coal mines, but also other mineral exploitation.
So the prisoners are mining coal.
Yes, it confirms this horrifying reality. The forced labor of political prisoners is a direct, indispensable fuel source for the North Korean economy.
Okay, now, we need to shift to the sort of the psychological and legal framework that holds this all together, because this is where it gets, well, truly disturbing.
This is where the concept of yun comes in, guilt by association.
Guilt by association. Explain that. How does it work?
It's genuinely chilling how meticulously the system weaponizes family ties, lineage. This is the core tragedy of the Kwan Lee-so. Up to 3 entire generations can be punished for the supposed crime of just one family member.
3 generations. So your grandfather commits a crime.
And your father and you, potentially your children if you were born before imprisonment, all condemned, wiped out, sent to the camps.
And is there any kind of trial? Any process?
Absolutely none. Zero judicial process. No right to appeal, no lawyer, nothing. This is purely extrajudicial punishment.
So what happens? How are people taken?
Families just disappear, usually in the middle of the night. Security forces arrive, they're taken away, and that's it. If you're a child, you might wake up, your parents are gone, you never hear from them or about them again. You might end up in the camp too, or an orphanage associated with the system.
And what kind of crime triggers this? Does it have to be something major, like treason?
That's what's truly terrifying. The threshold is incredibly low. People aren't necessarily sent there for active anti-regime activities. It can be merely for being suspected of being a wrongdoer.
Suspected?
Yes, or a wrong thinker. Or engaging in wrong associations. Even just knowing someone who fell out of favor. The fear of suspicion itself is enough justification to condemn entire families to a life sentence of hard labor.
It sounds like a system designed to guarantee absolute loyalty through terror.
Precisely. It ensures every citizen lives in a perpetual state of intellectual paralysis. Thinking the wrong thing isn't just dangerous for you, it's a potential genetic liability for your entire bloodline. And to really grasp what Yonj means, what this generational punishment looks like on the ground, we have to look at the stories of those who were born inside, whose entire reality was shaped by that barbed wire.
Which brings us back to Shin Dong-hyuk. He was literally born inside Camp 14.
Correct. His very existence wasn't a choice. It was a function of the system. His parents, well, they didn't fall in love. They were assigned to each other by prison guards.
A sign, like arranged marriage within the camp.
Sort of, but even colder. It was presented as a kind of twisted reward. You see, intimacy in the camp is strictly forbidden unless the guards explicitly grant permission.
And if it happens without permission?
If a woman becomes pregnant without that guard-sanctioned marriage, both she and the baby are executed on the spot. No question.
So marriage is a reward for what?
It's granted as a promotion, usually for exceptional hard work, meeting quotas consistently, but maybe more importantly, for becoming a dedicated informant, for snitching on fellow prisoners.
So Shin's parents were informers.
That's the implication, or at least highly compliant workers. That's how the system engineered the birth of children like Shin and his older brother. They were the children of desperation and compliance, not affection. Shin grew up knowing absolutely nothing else. For him, the camp wasn't prison. It was just the world, reality.
And that reality was governed by rules, brutal rules.
Absolutely. More stringent, more immediately brutal than any legal code outside. They call them the 10 Commandments of the camp. They dictated survival. The smallest violation could mean, and often did mean, immediate public execution.
He memorized them.
Completely. Not out of piety, obviously, but out of absolute necessity. They were like the laws of physics in his world. You don't break them if you want to exist tomorrow.
Can you give us some examples? What are these commandments like?
Sure. Let's pull out a few specific ones just to illustrate the severity. Rule number 1. Any witness to an attempted escape who fails to report it will be shot immediately.
Wow. So that turns everyone into a potential guard.
Exactly. Every fellow prisoner is a potential threat. Every personal bond becomes a liability. You can't trust anyone.
What about basic survival, like food?
Equally absolute. Rule number 3. Anyone who steals or conceals any foodstuffs will be shot immediately.
Stealing food means death.
instant death. And Rule 5 reinforces that collective punishment idea again. Anyone who holds or hides a fugitive's possessions, conspires with him, or simply fails to report him will be shot immediately.
These aren't just threats, are they? They're enforced.
Oh, rigorously. Often in public executions designed specifically to terrify the remaining population into absolute submission. Fear is the main currency.
And alongside this constant fear of immediate death, there was hunger. Perpetual grinding hunger.
Yes. Shin's entire world revolved around food and forced labor. His mother worked in the rice fields, often 10, 12, sometimes 15 hours a day. Back-breaking work.
And the whole system runs on merciless production quotas.
Quotas they had to meet.
Had to. They were designed to be barely achievable, even for someone healthy. If you met your quota, you got just enough food, usually watery corn gruel, to keep you functioning, barely, until the next day.
And if you didn't meet the quota, which must have happened often.
If you didn't meet it, maybe due to exhaustion, illness, anything, your already meager ration was cut, often in half.
Which makes you weaker.
Exactly. It sets up this truly vicious cycle. Less food means less energy, which means less production, which means even fewer rations, leading ultimately to wasting away and death by starvation or associated disease. It's a slow, methodical execution by exhaustion.
And how did this starvation affect Shin's relationship with his own family, with his mother? It completely warped it. His entire life was defined by those 3 meager meals a day. If he made a mistake at school or work, his portion was instantly cut. The source material, Hardin's book, notes he viewed his mother not as a source of care or comfort,
But how?
but purely as a rival in the fight for every meager scrap of food. He admitted to constantly stealing her tiny portion while she was out working in the fields.
Stealing from his own mother.
Yes, the system successfully eroded the most fundamental human bond, the family unit, by weaponizing hunger. Survival trumped everything, even maternal connection.
Was there any other source of food?
Meat.
Protein was incredibly rare, and obtaining it was dangerous. The only source of meat Shin and the other inmates really had access to was catching rats.
Rats.
Yes, they would catch them, roast them over fire, bones, for everything, just to get some extra calories, some protein, to survive another day.
That desperation is just unthinkable. And you mentioned this environment-destroying moral sense.
Yeah.
There was an anecdote. Yes, the source material provides this powerful, truly terrifying story. When Shin was a young boy, maybe 6 or 7, he was in the camp schoolhouse. He witnessed a teacher who, remember, wore a guard's uniform and carried a weapon find 5 kernels of grain hidden in a small girl's pocket. Just 5 kernels.
5 kernels of corn or rice.
Exactly. Tiny amount. The girl was immediately ordered to kneel on the hard concrete floor. The teacher then took a heavy wooden pointing stick and struck her repeatedly on the head, over and over, until she just collapsed, unconscious.
Oh my God.
Her classmates then had to carry her back to her family's hut. She died that night from the beating, from the head injuries.
For 5 kernels of grain, how did Shin react as a child witnessing this?
And here's the really devastating psychological insight. Shin, whose only frame of reference was the 10 Commandments of the camp, felt no pity, no outrage, no empathy.
He didn't.
He stated later, quite clearly, that he had absolutely no doubt the girl deserved it. She deserved to die. Why? Because Rule 3 dictates. Stealing food means death. End of story.
The system had completely conditioned him.
Completely. That level of psychological conditioning, where a child accepts, even endorses, the execution of another child over 5 kernels of grain. It just shows the total, horrifying victory of the system over basic human morality. Now, Shin's reality, as we said, was defined by total ignorance of anything outside the wire. To get a sense of the shock, the trauma of entering that world, we need to turn to someone who knew what freedom looked like.
Kim Young.
Yes, Kim Young. He was already in his mid-40s when his life was just instantly erased and he was thrown into Camp 14.
And what was his life like before? You said he knew freedom.
He was a man of considerable status in North Korean society. Before his condemnation, he was a high-ranking military officer. He'd also been the vice president of a major state-owned company.
So relatively privileged.
Very privileged by North Korean standards. He lived a life with access to culture, probably better food and housing. He even had a personal chauffeur, government benefits. His world seemed entirely secure. And then suddenly, it was just annihilated.
And his crime. What sent a high-ranking official to the worst camp?
The ultimate crime under Yeonshi's lineage. It turned out his father and brother had been accused years earlier of spying for the United States. They were executed for it.
But Kim was a high-ranking officer. How did that work?
Here's the terrible irony. After his father's execution, Kim was apparently placed in an orphanage and raised under a completely new name. He claims he was totally unaware of his father's alleged crimes or even his true family heritage.
He didn't even know.
According to his testimony, no. It took over 4 decades for someone in the security apparatus to apparently trace his family ties back to the supposed wrongdoer. And that historical link, discovered decades later, was enough. Enough to condemn him instantly to the total control zone.
The shock must have been immense, going from VP with a chauffeur to Camp 14.
The contrast created almost unimaginable suffering for him. As a former, desk-bound manager and officer, he'd never experienced hard physical labor. He struggled terribly. Suddenly, he's spending day after grueling day deep underground in the coal mines.
Mining coal.
Yes. Endless hours in the darkness, breathing toxic dust, facing absolutely zero mercy from the guards who oversaw the work gangs. Constant pressure, constant threat.
And in that environment, mistakes are inevitable, surely.
Absolutely guaranteed. And punishments were swift and brutal. The source material gives a specific example. One day, likely just due to sheer exhaustion, Kim made a small error in his work. A guard immediately struck him repeatedly with the butt of his rifle.
Hit him with a gun.
Yes, until he fell unconscious. And the medical treatment. Basically non-existent, maybe splashed with some water, but the punishment wasn't just the beating.
What else?
For the next 2 days, his already minuscule food rations were cut in half. They were effectively punishing him for being too weak to perform the impossible labor they forced upon him.
How long could someone endure that?
For Kim,
Yeah.
not long. After just 2 months of this existence, the darkness, the starvation, the beatings, the utter despair, he decided to end his life.
He attempted suicide.
Yes. After a long, brutal day in the mine, he stepped into one of the mining shaft elevators. As it ascended, reaching about 2,000 feet, he deliberately pulled out the safety pin. He hoped the car, with him inside, would plummet to the bottom of the shaft.
Did it work?
Tragically, no. He survived the fall. The source notes he was found injured but alive. They patched him up just enough so he could work again and sent him right back into the mines.
So even the escape of death was denied him.
Exactly. The crushing reality was that the vicious cycle just went on. The system robbed him, even of the agency to choose his own death.
If suicide wasn't an escape, what did survival look like? Just enduring.
Enduring and witnessing constant terror. During his time in Camp 14, Kim reported being forced to watch a total of 25 public executions.
25.
Yes. And the reasons were often arbitrary, nonsensical, purely designed to reinforce the rules through absolute fear.
Can you recall any specific examples he gave?
He specifically recounted one execution he witnessed. A fellow prisoner was caught and killed simply for collecting a few chestnuts that had fallen from a tree just outside the designated work area.
Chestnuts. Fallen from a tree.
Yes. That single, tiny attempt to supplement a starvation diet, to find a few extra calories, was deemed capital theft, worthy of immediate execution. It just proves the system will kill you for any flicker of independent action, any attempt to take even the smallest control over your own survival.
Let's go back to Shin Dong-hyuk now. Because his story takes another turn, doesn't it? It moves from the general horror to something even more personal, and then into the specialized torture centers.
Yes, his journey includes an event that is just rooted entirely in those camp commandments we talked about. An act of, well, almost unthinkable personal betrayal.
What happened?
When Shin was around 15, he was living primarily with his father at that point. But as a temporary, very rare reward for good behavior, a teacher allowed him to spend one night back at his mother's dwelling. By chance, his older brother, Shin Dong-hyuk, who was 21 and worked at the prison's cement factory a few miles away, was also visiting their mother that same night.
So the family was briefly reunited.
Briefly, yes. But that night, Shin woke up. He heard hushed voices coming from the kitchen area. He listened closely.
What did he hear?
He heard his brother outlining a plan to escape the camp. And his mother. She wasn't arguing. She was offering quiet support, maybe advice.
An escape plan. And Shin overheard it.
He overheard it, and immediately all that psychological conditioning we discussed just kicked in. For him, this wasn't a complex moral dilemma about family loyalty versus the state.
It was about Rule 1.
It's purely about Rule 1. Any witness to an attempted escape who fails to report it will be shot immediately. Survival instinct took over completely.
So what did he do?
He knew. Instantly, he had to report them. He quietly woke up a friend sleeping nearby, told him what he heard, and the friend urged him, "You have to tell the guards right now." They went together and reported the entire escape plot to the night guard on duty.
He reported his own mother and brother.
He did. And it gets worse. He was then apparently coerced or pressured by guards into signing a formal but false police statement.
False. What did it say?
It claimed he had actually witnessed his mother and brother commit murder. This fabricated testimony was likely used to expedite and guarantee the execution order.
He signed that against his own family.
According to his later account, yes. The system demanded it for his own survival.
And what was the outcome for his mother and brother?
The outcome was swift and brutal, the ultimate payoff for the regime's conditioning. Soon after, Shin was taken by the guards, along with a huge crowd of other prisoners forced to assemble to the execution site near the Tong River.
He had to watch.
He had to watch. His mother and his brother were dragged out, publicly denounced, tied to stakes, and executed by firing squad right in front of his eyes.
So the system didn't just punish them, it used him to do it and forced him to witness it.
Exactly. It successfully dismantled the family bond in the most horrific way possible.
Yeah.
Pitting son against mother, brother against brother, prioritizing the iron rules of the camp above every fundamental human loyalty. It's hard to imagine a more complete form of psychological destruction.
Even after doing that, did he still want to escape himself?
It seems the desire for freedom, however deeply buried, persisted. Later on, after his section of Camp 14 was apparently merged into Camp 18, which is considered slightly less brutal, relatively speaking, he did attempt to escape.
He tried.
Twice, according to his account. Both times he tried to crawl under the perimeter fence. Both times he was recaptured fairly quickly.
And the consequences for failed escape attempts.
After the second failed attempt, the punishment was absolute. He wasn't just beaten or given less food. He was sent back to the original, harsher Camp 14 and thrown into a special detention center within that facility.
A prison within the prison.
Essentially, yes. And this particular center had one singular horrific purpose. Specialized, systematic torture. Shin has spoken publicly at length about the devastating physical scars he still carries from that time.
What kind of torture?
He describes one specific, common method. His arms were tied tightly behind his back with rope, then pulled backward and upward over his shoulders, dislocating them and stretching everything. He says it left his arms permanently bent and deformed.
Permanently damaged.
Yes. He stated that before the torture, his arms were straight. But now, they're a constant, visible reminder, a physical map of the system's brutality that he sees every single time he looks in the mirror.
How long did the torture last?
He says he endured about 4 weeks of continuous, varied torture in that specialized unit. But even after that, he wasn't released back to the general work population.
Where did he go?
He was thrown into a solitary confinement cell, pitch black. No windows, no light source at all. And tiny, barely enough space for him to even lie down completely straight.
Solitary confinement in total darkness. For how long?
He spent the next 6 months. 6 months in that crushing, absolute darkness and isolation. Hearing these stories, Shin's and Kim's survival, they really are genuine miracles. And it forces us to really emphasize just how statistically improbable, how incredibly difficult escape is from these total control zones.
Right. It's not like they're walking out the front gate. These aren't porous facilities by any stretch.
Not at all. They are intensely protected, high-security zones. We're talking multiple layers of defense. Those 10-foot-high electrified fences we mentioned.
Electrified.
Yes, high voltage. Complex networks of barbed wire on top and around them. Armed guards stationed frequently, maybe every few hundred meters along the perimeter. And machine gun nests positioned specifically for intersecting lines of fire.
Designed to kill anyone approaching the fence.
Precisely. Escaping any high-security prison is incredibly difficult anywhere in the world. Attempting it from a North Korean Kwan Lee-so is functionally signing your own death warrant almost every time. The odds are vanishingly small.
Okay, so how did Kim Young manage it? What was his path out? His escape relied on chaos, right?
Chaos and timing, yes. So in 1996, Kim was transferred from Camp 14, that absolute hill, to Camp 18, which, as he described it, comparatively felt like heaven.
Heaven being a relative term here,
It's
obviously.
extremely relative.
Yeah.
The guards were still brutal, the work was still crushing, but perhaps marginally less efficient in their cruelty, or the starvation was slightly less acute. It was there, remarkably, he was reunited with his mother.
His mother was in Camp 18, too.
Yes, she was about 70 years old at the time, also a prisoner, also subjected to beatings and hard labor, but she was lucid. And she gave him what has to be the ultimate act of maternal love in that horrific environment.
What did she do?
She urged him, pleaded with him to leave her behind, to focus only on escaping himself. She was certain they would both die there eventually, so his only mission, she told him, must be to save himself and tell the world.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
an incredible burden and gift.
It is. And Kim took that command to heart. He started meticulously planning, looking for any opportunity. His chance finally came during a work shift, loading coal onto a train that would travel outside the camp.
A train heading out.
Yes. One specific coal wagon had previously carried grain, and there were still some scattered remnants, kernels of grain left on the floor. When the prisoners, starved as they were, spotted it, the scene just exploded into pandemonium. A desperate, violent scramble for every tiny speck of food.
Pure chaos.
Total chaos. And in that split second, that moment of distraction and confusion, Kim found something. A small, narrow space beneath a loose metal panel in the floor of that coal wagon.
Hidden.
Hidden and impossibly tight. But fueled by his mother's sacrifice, his own will to live, he somehow managed to squeeze himself inside, under the panel, as coal was being loaded on top.
He hid in the floor of the train car.
Yes. As the train began its journey out of the camp, Kim rode with it, buried under coal dust, barely able to breathe. Hours later, the train finally pulled into Goen Station, well outside the camp perimeter. It was around 4 a.m. He managed to crawl out, unseen, and just disappear into the pre-dawn darkness.
He was out, but not safe yet.
Not by a long shot. That was just the first step. He quickly found some discarded workers' clothes, changed to blend in, and began an incredibly perilous months-long journey.
Months long.
Yes. Risking detection constantly, he had to cross the border into China itself, extremely dangerous for North Korean refugees, then navigate the vast, often hostile landscape of China, and then Mongolia, before he finally successfully reached asylum and freedom in South Korea. An unbelievable trek.
Unbelievable. Okay, now Shin Dong-hyuk's final escape. The one that actually worked after the failed attempts and the torture. How did that happen?
Right. So after his time in that pitch-black solitary cell, Shin was eventually put back into the general population, eventually working in a garment factory inside the camp. It was there he met another prisoner named Park Young.
Park Young.
Yes. Park was different from Shin. He was apparently from an elite background, someone who'd known the outside world, seen other countries before his own condemnation. They started talking, planning. They knew Shin was likely already on an execution list after his previous attempts. It was now or never.
So they planned together. What was the plan?
Their chance came when they were assigned to do some woodwork, gathering firewood near the outer perimeter fence. That same fence, 10 feet high, electrified barbed wire.
The same type of fence he failed to get through before.
Exactly. But this time, they meticulously watched the guard patrols from their work area. They timed the long gaps between patrols, which could sometimes be significant. The plan was terrifyingly simple, really. Wait for dusk, hope the falling snow would cover their tracks, make a run for it, and try to somehow get through or over the wires without touching the lethal electricity.
High risk. Extremely high risk.
The highest. As the sun was setting on the chosen day, they moved into position near the fence line. Park apparently hesitated for a moment, understandably overwhelmed by the fear. But Shin reportedly grabbed his hand, pulled him, and they just ran. Straight for the fence.
They ran for it. What happened at the fence?
Park reached the fence fractionally ahead of Shin. He tried to squeeze his body through a gap between the two lowest wires.
Oh.
But he misjudged, or slipped. He hit one of the high-voltage wires. The result was instantaneous, catastrophic. Park's body seized up violently from the massive electrical shock. He died instantly, his body collapsing right there on the fence wire.
He was killed instantly.
Yes. But in his final involuntary moments, his dead weight, his posture as he fell against the wire, it bent that lower wire downwards, just enough to create a narrow momentary gap between the electrified wire his body was on and the ground below.
A gap created by his death.
A gap created by Park's sacrifice. Shin saw it in that split second, and he seized that horrifying, tragic opportunity. He immediately started crawling, scrambling over Park's lifeless body, trying to slip through that small gap underneath the deadly wire.
Did he make it?
He was almost clear. But as he pulled himself through, his legs slipped. One of his shins hit the same live wire that had killed Park.
He got shocked, too.
He got shocked. He felt the high voltage tear through him. He said later it instantly charred his pants, severely burning the skin on his leg from his ankle all the way up to his knee. The scars are still visible today, but the shock also threw him clear.
It threw him past the fence.
Yes, he landed on the other side. He was through. He didn't pause, didn't look back. He just ran. Ran as fast and as far as he could, fueled by adrenaline and terror for 2 solid hours without stopping.
2 hours straight.
Until sheer physical exhaustion finally forced him to collapse. And it was only then, lying there in the snow, miles from the camp, that the realization finally hit him. He was free. He had actually made it out.
And his journey after that.
Like Kim's, it was long and dangerous. It took him almost 2 years navigating through China, facing constant risk of capture and repatriation before he, too, eventually reached safety and asylum in South Korea.
These escape stories, they offer this tiny sliver of hope, but the really crucial, terrifying reality check is that the Kwan-Lee-So camps, they haven't gone away, right? They continue to operate right now.
Absolutely. And expert analysis suggests they aren't just static. They're actively evolving. Often, the changes seem designed to make them even more secure, even deadlier.
What kind of changes are we seeing? How do we know?
Well, connecting this to the current geopolitical situation, satellite imagery, analyzed again by groups like HRNK, shows pretty clear evidence of strategic and operational shifts over recent years.
For example?
For instance, some camps that were previously located closer to the northern border near China have reportedly been either closed or, more likely, relocated further inland, deeper inside North Korea.
Why would they do that?
It's almost certainly a deliberate strategy. Moving them inland makes escape attempts even more difficult, a longer journey to reach any potential border. And it minimizes the risk of, say, international visibility if a prisoner did somehow reach a boundary area. Keep it hidden deeper within.
Okay. Moving them inland. What else?
We're also seeing, within the existing perimeters of some camps, the construction of new internal boundaries, new fences, new walls inside the main camp fence.
Internal perimeters. What's the thinking there?
It strongly suggests the regime might be creating new, separate zones within the camps, possibly to isolate different categories of prisoners from each other, maybe separating high-value political prisoners or those considered ideologically beyond redemption from the already doomed general population. Tighter control, more segmentation.
And the outer defenses, are they being strengthened too?
It appears so. In terms of pure containment infrastructure, analysis shows a noticeable increase in the construction of new watchtowers in some locations. And, as we touched on earlier, new layouts that strongly resemble systems designed for intersecting lines of fire around the perimeters.
So not just defense, but offense against escapees.
Precisely. This isn't just about keeping people in. This kind of infrastructure looks designed to basically exterminate anyone who even attempts to approach or breach the fence line. The system seems to be doubling down on containment and lethality, making the kinds of escapes we just discussed even more impossible for anyone currently inside.
And the number of people trapped in this system right now, do we have any estimates?
The human toll remains absolutely staggering. Current estimates from HRNK and other credible human rights organizations suggest that somewhere between 80,000 and 120,000 people are currently held in North Korea's network of political prison camps.
Up to 120,000 people today. Today. It's vital that you, the listener, remember this horrifying abuse is not some historical artifact we're discussing. It is ongoing, happening right now as we speak.
Okay. Now, we do need to address something complex about Shin Dong-hyuk's testimony specifically, the ethics of survivor accounts. Because in 2015, he did retract parts of his story, didn't he?
Yes, that's correct. He publicly admitted that he had changed or conflated certain key details in his original account, the one documented in Escape from Camp 14. Dates, locations, even some sequences of events were different from what he initially reported.
So this raises a really critical question for anyone listening. If Shin himself admitted to, well, essentially lying about certain crucial elements like the exact circumstances of reporting his mother and brother, or which camp certain tortures occurred in, how can we fully trust the rest of his high-stakes testimony? It's a fair question. It's a completely fair and necessary question, and it requires a nuanced discussion. According to Shin himself, and accounts from those working with him, some memories, particularly surrounding the most extreme torture, were simply too painful, too traumatic for him to recount accurately or fully at first.
Trauma affecting memory.
Exactly. While other details, specifically the act of reporting his own mother and brother, were sources of immense shame and guilt, making them incredibly difficult to admit truthfully, especially in the early stages of his freedom when he was thrust onto a global stage.
Is that common for trauma victims?
Sadly, yes.
Yeah.
A well-documented phenomenon for survivors of prolonged, severe trauma and torture. They often rearrange facts, repress certain details, conflate events or distort elements, sometimes unconsciously, as a coping mechanism just to survive the telling and retelling of their experiences.
Okay, so there are psychological reasons, but the core question still stands. Does this retraction undermine the fundamental truth of his experience? The existence of the camps, the abuse he clearly suffered?
That's the crux of it. And figures like Greg Scarlatoia, the executive director of HRNK, argue very strongly that while the retractions are serious and must be acknowledged, they do not alter the fundamental truth of Shin's condemnation and experience.
What are the undisputed facts then?
We need to focus on what remains established beyond reasonable doubt. Was Shin Dong-hyuk a political prisoner born in the camps due to Yunj? Yes, absolutely. Did he spend significant time, years, in both Camp 14 and Camp 18? Yes. Did he witness the public execution of his mother and brother after reporting their escape plan? Yes, he maintains he did. Did he suffer extreme torture and abuse?
Yes.
The core narrative holds. The foundational truth that he was a victim of this brutal system, that he was tortured, abused, starved, and lived this horrific reality, remains unchanged by the inconsistencies in certain details, and crucially, the physical scars he carries.
The burns, the deformed arms.
Exactly. Those serve as irrefutable physical evidence of the reality of the abuse he endured, regardless of the precise timeline or location he might have initially misremembered or misrepresented for those complex psychological reasons.
And his testimony isn't the only one. There's Kim Young, other defectors.
Precisely. The volume of confirming testimony from other survivors, combined with the satellite evidence, leaves very little doubt about the fundamental nature and ongoing operation of this horrific system.
So if we accept the core truth based on all this evidence, what's the takeaway? What's our responsibility as people outside looking in?
The conclusion, certainly from the perspective of human rights advocates, is that this isn't just an interesting or tragic story. It's a matter of profound moral, ethical, religious, and political obligation for the international community, for all of us.
An obligation to do what?
To continue to pay attention, to maintain our focus, our interest, our pressure regarding these issues.
Yeah.
Because these people, the 100,000 or more still trapped inside, they were tortured yesterday, they're being tortured today, and the same systematic abuses will continue tomorrow if the world simply looks away, if we allow ourselves to forget or become complacent.
Silence enables it.
Ignoring the existence, the reality of the Kwanli So isn't a passive choice. It's effectively an active endorsement of the silence and secrecy that the North Korean regime desperately relies on to perpetuate these crimes against humanity.
So what does this all mean then? After this deep dive, we've explored an environment that's defined by, well, sheer terror, generational punishment, endless forced labor, institutionalized starvation, the complete deliberate destruction of the most fundamental human bonds.
A landscape made visible really only through the cold, hard data of satellite imagery and the incredibly agonizing, brave testimony of that tiny handful of individuals who somehow survived and managed to carry their physical and psychological scars out to the rest of the world.
And here's maybe a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider as we wrap up. After hearing all this, you now likely know more about the operational reality, the rules, the geography, the sheer horror of these totalitarian control zones than the vast majority of ordinary citizens living inside North Korea ever will. They live under the shadow of this system, but without the knowledge we now have access to.
So the question becomes, what specific moral or perhaps even political responsibility does this confirmed knowledge carry for you, for us? In a world where we know these systematic industrial-scale abuses are happening right now today, largely out of sight but entirely confirmed, what do we do with this knowledge?
That's the question to ponder. Thank you for taking this critical and, frankly, difficult journey with us into the source material today.
We strongly encourage you, if this has impacted you, to seek out the detailed HR&K reports online and perhaps read Blaine Hardin's book, Escape from Camp 14, and look into the testimony of Kim Young and other survivors. Their voices deserve to be heard.